Hello everyone, my name is Ahmed Alshehri. I'm presenting on behalf of the other co-authors our paper titled Exploring the Privacy Concerns of Bystanders in Smart Homes from both perspectives, owners and bystanders. We are all affiliated with the Colorado School of Mines from Golden, Colorado. This slide is not really important to audience like you. You know privacy very well. I'm assuming everyone has some sort of experience researching it. But let's talk about some definitions. We really know that privacy definition or perspective differs from person to person, country to country, continent to continent, or region to region. They don't all agree about the same definition, but some bases kind of agree about privacy can be someone's right to keep their personal life private and secret. Information privacy is the right to control your data and how is it going to be collected or shared. It's getting more complicated as technologies advance, but let's start with this. And I really would like to mention also privacy is considered a fundamental human right recognized by the United Nations. This is this is very important because knowing that it's it's more than one region or one country, because most of the time user studies are done in one region. However, this can tell us that the majority of the people have similar concerns. And I highlighted the one of the regulations here I'm mentioning because it affects the state I'm residing in right now, Colorado, and I'm kind of proud of the recent policy and regulations regarding personal privacy. It is important to know and research privacy because it could prevent or delay innovation and growth in any industry. And we really want to tackle that so we can have great smart home technologies. Why is research about privacy important? Probably I don't need to tell you, but I'm just gonna take a shot. We really want the utility of these smart home devices. I read an article recently about a neighborhood in California where crime was decreased, the rate of crime decreased 50% by only asking people to have a smart doorbell. And so there's a significant utility we want to utilize and want to keep, but at the same time we want to address privacy so we can really have that great privacy friendly technologies. um, Also, the last number I want to talk about is it is anticipated that there will be 375 million smart homes by 2024. And this is important because a home is not resided by one person, usually by two, three, four. So multiply this number by three, four, five, if you will. So the impact is huge. The technologies are emerging, dynamic, and has high potential. Dynamic is important because we want to steer the wheel to the privacy-friendly kind of technology. Um, some of the concerns in smart homes in regard to privacy, I didn't mean to list all the concerns, but those are kind of like big concerns, and we focus on the multi-user environment uh, uh, perspective, if you will. Some definitions so you can really follow my presentation very well. Smart homes are any smart home device that is able to connect to the internet, so collecting data from the physical world and transfer it to the internet. Owners, we mean the main users of these devices who can control them. And bystanders, we have more than one type. So I mentioned in this slide two types, and I will focus on the second type only because that's what we actually considered in our paper. The people who are not living in the smart home but could be visiting. So they don't have access, they don't have control, like as family members, friends, or domestic workers. Data practices um, has three parts: collection, how is the data collected, how is the data stored, and then how is the data shared. I would like to emphasize that we focus on how owners share data with others. We don't focus on how companies or cloud services share data with third parties or others. That's an additional layer to the problem and is indeed worth exploring if someone wants to take a lead and go after that. So in a visual representation, so imagine you're visiting your friend, you're the bystander, and your friend has smart home devices. you don't have control over your data, and you don't usually consent. So it's like the two kind of pillars of privacy are missing. Um, and we want to understand this from owner's perspective, like do they think other people have privacy concerns in their home, and we want to understand it from bystander perspective when they go to other people's homes. And also it's major, we want to explore the willingness to negotiate, because if, like, let's say like they both agree there is a privacy right or concern for the bystanders, and how can we reach an agreement, how we can find a common ground, and so on. So briefly about the related work, we are not the first to look at the bystander privacy, but we claim to be the first to look from that kind of angle. The first group of papers looked at the bystander privacy from one perspective only, which is like their perspective themselves. So we argue these papers are great. I have nothing against them, but we argue that if we don't include the owner's perspective, we're missing actionable items. So because if the bystander has a privacy concern and the owner are not willing to address that concern, the owners are still the decision makers, and nothing might happen. The other group of papers are privacy tools in public places like campuses, downtowns, supermarkets. Expectation of privacy are differ between smart homes and public places. Third, in an Airbnb setting, it's actually a paper that was published in a previous proceeding of PETS. I can't remember if it was last year or 2020. Airbnb guests and hosts don't usually stay together. They don't usually have trust established between each other like friends or families. And they don't, like, at the minimum, Airbnb requires hosts to disclose if they have smart cameras, like just one type of smart homes. So there's different situations. That's what we're claiming to. How we want to fill the gap in the research. The main contribution we want to explore from both perspectives, because we want to see the concerns and we want to see what we can do about it, and we want to provide recommendations and to the smart home vendors and manufacturers and researchers. I'm coming from the computer science background, so of course I'm gonna look at the technical solution first. Excuse that approach, but that's how we kind of like program to think most of the times. So we actually build a Raspberry Pi. That Raspberry Pi collects the devices that's connected to the network and goes after their privacy policy and pull all of them and display them to anyone who walks into our lab. We did that as an experiment. Then we realized we don't actually understand what people's concerns are and what they're willing to negotiate. Then we took a step back and was like, okay, let's explore a user study and see what we can do about it. Then we go back to the technical solution. The Raspberry Pi is still in the lab, by the way. So we designed a study, and if you're an owner, you're going to be asked a different set of questions, and if you're a bystander, you're going to be asked a different set of questions, and towards the end, we're going to ask the same questions for both to kind of explore the negotiable data practices between owners and bystanders. The yellow rectangles here are partially unique to our study, so other people have explored them, but we kind of like fit them to be like give a holistic picture, and the gray we claim to be unique in our study. And this is like briefly a demographic about our participants. You can refer to the paper if you want more detail about it. So in our questions, or in our study, we asked two different questions: open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. And this is important because if the problem is new, you want to ask open-ended and see what people say, and we really want to utilize that. So we use thematic analysis to build our code book, and for the open-ended questions, and we used answer distribution within subject comparison and between subject comparison for the closed-ended questions. Okay, going to the finding, we have three major parts for the finding. The first is for the owners, then for the bystanders, then for both, which is the negotiable data practices. Then we'll move to the recommendations. So just a snippet of what we found. Slight majority of owners recognize bystander privacy right, because if they don't recognize privacy rights, there's nothing we can do about it. So that's really important. The second part here is really like interesting. So 80% of owners would not disclose, and we looked deeper into why. And we found that owners themselves don't understand what data types are being collected in their own smart home. And that's a really major. And if we don't try to help owners understand the data practices, like we might actually not be able to solve the bystander privacy issue at all. And also, like, owners are willing to address privacy concern of family members and friends more than others. So the social relationship matter in this situation. And we did analyze this, and we found the differences to be statistically significant. And from the bystander perspective, and we found that the majority of bystander feel concerns, and that is not different. And we tested if the exposure to smart homes make bystander think differently. For example, if a bystander had been to a smart home, so they understand it more, would they have a different concern or not? And we didn't find any statistical significant difference, which means like all bystander kind of have privacy concerns regardless if they had been or not. I want to like emphasize the second point, which is very interesting, is like bystanders do not expect owner to, and the reason why, because they think that bystander owners do not understand their own data practices in the first place, so they would not be able to explain to bystanders. So that was very interesting, aligning perfectly with the previous slide. And we want to move to the negotiable part. Negotiable part, like where we want to find common ground between owners and bystander. And we kind of ask the same set of questions about collection, storage, and sharing. And the storage has the shortest gap because they're all different, and the answer distribution between all of these questions were statistically significant. But we kind of like really give insight where you can develop solutions for the future smart devices. We recommend to we provide recommendation for like based on owner perspective and bystander perspective. We want to help owner understand their own data practice so they can explain it to others, and we want to empower them with a technical solution to disclose to bystander, and we still want them to preserve the utility of these devices. We want bystander to be notified about only sensitive data if it's being collected, and we want them to be able to negotiate with owners. And that is all, and I will be happy to answer any questions for you. Thank you so much.